40 million albums sold. 6 #1 hits. Pop and chaos into culture. But behind those numbers was a woman the world never truly knew. In 1979, Heart of Glass hit #1 on the Billboard Hot 100, making Blondie the first punk band in history to dominate mainstream radio. Debbie Harry's face was everywhere: Rolling Stone, Vogue, Playboy. She was the Marilyn Monroe of new wave, the voice of a generation caught between rebellion and beauty. But while the world saw glitter and fame, Debbie was fighting ghosts that never made the headlines. Born in 1945 and given up for adoption just 3 months later, she spent a lifetime searching for where she belonged. Before fame, she was kidnapped at knife point, assaulted, and left shaken in her New York apartment, a story she kept buried for decades. When she finally spoke about it, the world barely listened. By 1981, Blondie had conquered the charts. Call Me, The Tide Is High, Rapture. Yet only a year later, it all collapsed. Chris Stein, her partner and bandmate, was struck by a rare autoimmune disease. Debbie disappeared from the spotlight to care for him, losing her money, her fame, and nearly her mind. The tabloids turned cruel. They said she was a drug addict, a has-been, a fallen icon. They sold her body before they ever sold her story. And while millions danced to her songs, Debbie Harry Punk's Platinum Angel was fading into silence. This is not a story about a rock star. It's about a woman built from contradictions, power and pain, seduction and survival. The face that defined punk. The voice that refused to die. Debbie Harry, the rise, the ruin, and the rebirth of a legend. She was born Angela Tremble in Miami, 1945, and abandoned before she could even remember a face. Adopted by Catherine and Richard Harry, she was given a new name, a new home, and a new identity, Deborah Ann Harry. But deep inside, the fracture never healed. In interviews decades later, Debbie confessed she always felt like a visitor in my own life. While other girls played house, she dreamed of escape, of New York City, flashing lights, and a life that would finally make her real. She grew up shy, withdrawn, haunted by the invisible question, why wasn't I wanted? In her teenage years, she began to drift art school, waitressing, hitchhiking across the East Coast. She joined small bands, worked as a Playboy bunny for a short time, even lived in communes. Every move, every job, every lover a desperate search for belonging. Years later, in her memoir Face It, she revealed one more buried trauma the night she was kidnapped and assaulted in her own apartment. Her attacker stole her guitar, but he couldn't steal the one thing that would define her forever, her voice. New York City, 1974. The Bowery was rotting neon, needles, and noise. Out of that chaos came a woman with a peroxide halo and a stare that could stop traffic. Debbie Harry, 29 years old, broke, and hungry, stepped onto the stage of CBGB for the first time.
Just tunnels across the Hudson so often change my mind.
The room smelled like sweat and cigarettes, but what people saw that night was electric. She called her band Blondie because that's what catcallers yelled at her on the street. The lineup was raw: Chris Stein on guitar, Clem Burke on drums, Jimmy Destry on keys, Gary Valentine on bass. They weren't rock, they weren't disco. They were something else: punk with lipstick, glamour with venom. By 1976, Blondie signed with Private Stock Records, releasing their self-titled debut. It flopped commercially, only 40,000 copies sold, but in London's underground clubs, it became gospel. British critics saw in her what America couldn't yet: the birth of a new kind of woman in rock, sexy, sarcastic, and absolutely in control. Everything changed in 1978 with the release of Parallel Lines. It sold over 20 million copies worldwide, catapulting Blondie from dingy bars to the global stage. Heart of Glass, with its disco pulse and punk sneer, hit has shown on the Billboard Hot 100, number 1 inch the UK, and top 10 inches 15 countries. For the first time, a punk band dominated pop radio, and Debbie Harry became the face of a revolution. She was everywhere. 20 magazine covers in 1 year. Rolling Stone, Cosmopolitan, Cream, Smash Hits, NME, even Playboy. Her platinum hair, crimson lips, and half-smile made her a sex symbol the industry didn't know how to define. Photographers like Andy Warhol, Robert Mapplethorpe, and Chris Stein turned her into a living icon. By 1980, Blondie's fourth album, Eat to the Beat, went platinum, and Call Me, written with Giorgio Moroder for the film American Gigolo, became the Hashon Song of the Year on Billboard. Spending 6 consecutive weeks at the top, Blondie was selling 1 million singles a month. Their music videos became MTV staples even before the channel officially launched in 1981. Then came Rapture, the first mainstream song to feature rap vocals, released in January 1981. It hit number 1 inch the US, introducing hip-hop to suburban America before most radio stations even knew what it was. Debbie Harry was not just a frontwoman, she was a cultural detonator. But with fame came invasion. Tabloids obsessed over her body, her lovers, her clothes. They called her punk's Marilyn Monroe, the blonde who weaponized beauty. Interviews fixated on her appearance rather than her artistry. She was labeled the sex and synth, the peroxide prophet. Debbie once said, "They sold my image like candy sweet, disposable, and profitable." Behind the flashbulbs, Blondie was breaking apart. Chris Stein, her partner and creative twin, began showing strange symptoms during their 1982 tour. Doctors diagnosed pemphigus vulgaris, a rare autoimmune disease that caused his skin to blister and peel. He nearly died. Debbie canceled the world tour, retreated from fame, and spent 4 years nursing him back to life in their Manhattan apartment. While the world thought she'd vanished, Debbie was living a nightmare. Millions in medical debt, bandmates suing each other, record labels dropping contracts, and the press calling her washed up. When the Hunter 1982 sold only 600,000 copies, a dramatic drop from Parallel Lines' 20 million, the band imploded. Yet in those years of chaos, Debbie Harry cemented herself as more than a pop star. She had crossed boundaries few women ever had. The first female lead in punk rock to achieve a Hashon album in both the US and UK. Over 40 million records sold worldwide by 1982. Headlined stadiums in 15 countries. Influenced the rise of Madonna, Cyndi Lauper, Gwen Stefani, and Lady Gaga, all of whom cite her as their blueprint. But she paid the price. As she once told The Guardian, "I became the fantasy they wanted until they didn't want it anymore." By 1983, Debbie Harry was gone from headlines, her fortune gone, her lover dying, and her band forgotten. But she wasn't finished. She was just about to rewrite what survival looks like after the fall. By 1983, Debbie Harry was 38, a superstar fading in real time. Only 4 years earlier, she'd ruled the charts. Parallel Lines had sold 20 million copies, Call Me topped 6 international charts, and Blondie had earned over $14 million in tour revenue in just 2 years. But fame in the 80 seconds was a machine, one that chewed through beauty and spat it out when the next new face arrived. When the Hunter 1982 underperformed, selling barely 600,000 copies worldwide, record executives lost faith. The following year, Blondie officially disbanded, citing exhaustion and personal conflicts. The truth was uglier. Chris Stein, her partner and guitarist, was dying. His diagnosis, pemphigus vulgaris, a rare autoimmune disease so brutal that his skin blistered from the slightest touch. There was no cure, only treatment, $1,000 per day in medical bills, which quickly consumed everything they had. Debbie sold her Manhattan apartment, jewelry, even memorabilia from her tours to keep him alive. Blondie's earnings evaporated. By 1984, she had less than $50,000 in her account, a devastating drop for someone who'd been grossing millions just 3 years before. The media didn't care. Paparazzi caught her leaving hospitals, thin, pale, unrecognizable. Tabloids ran headlines like "Blondie's Gone Gray" and "Debbie Harry, from Goddess to Ghost." Then came the rumors. She was accused of being a heroin addict, a label she never escaped, though she denied it repeatedly. She later admitted to experimenting with drugs, but said she never developed an addiction. Still, the 1,980 seconds media didn't need truth, it needed scandal. The press began to twist her love story into tragedy porn, a superstar wasting away for a dying man. In one infamous 1985 article, People magazine wrote, "She's not Debbie Harry rock goddess anymore, she's Florence Nightingale in black leather." It was meant as sympathy, but it read like an obituary. Her solo career tried to ignite and failed. In 1986, she released Rockbird, her first solo album. Despite strong critical reviews, it peaked at only #97 on the Billboard 200, selling around 250,000 copies in the US. Her single French Kissin' in the USA hit number 8 inches the UK, but it couldn't rescue her stateside reputation. By 1987, the MTV generation she helped invent had moved on. Madonna was selling 25 million albums. Cyndi Lauper dominated the charts. Blondie's legacy had been repackaged and sold without Debbie Harry. In 1989, she released Deaf, Dumb, and Blonde under Chrysalis Records, hoping to recapture old fire. The album sold only 350,000 copies worldwide. Even her single I Want That Man, which hit number 2 inches Australia, barely made a dent in the US market. Her tours played to half-empty 3,000-seat venues, a heartbreaking contrast to the 70,000 fan stadiums she once commanded. And through it all, Chris Stein's illness dragged on. For nearly 4 years, Debbie became his full-time caregiver, administering medication, cleaning wounds, and living off credit cards. As she told The Independent, "I didn't go out, I didn't sing, I didn't even think about music. My life was about keeping him alive." When Chris finally recovered in 1986, Debbie was exhausted, broke, and forgotten. Hollywood stopped calling. Record labels ghosted her. She appeared briefly in small film roles: Hairspray, 1,988, Heavy, 1,995, earning only a few $1,000s per part. But her biggest wounds were invisible. Years of media sexualization had taken a psychological toll. She once confessed, "I was treated like a toy, beautiful, blonde, and breakable. Once they'd had their fun, they threw me out of the box." Even feminist circles were divided about her. Some saw her as a trailblazer. Others accused her of selling sex to sell punk. In reality, she was a woman trying to survive an industry that commodified women's bodies and punished them for aging. By the early 90s, Blondie's legacy had been reduced to nostalgia compilations. She was living quietly in New York, often spotted at small art galleries or indie shows, far removed from the chaos she once ruled. Fans assumed she was retired. The truth was simpler: she was rebuilding from ashes. In 1993, a glimmer of revival came when Dream Sequence, a Blondie Greatest Hits reissue, sold over 500,000 copies in Europe. But the US industry still ignored her. When asked if she'd ever reunite Blondie, she laughed. "No one's asking. They think we're dead." She was 50 by then, an age that, for women in pop, was treated like exile. MTV no longer aired her videos. Magazines called her a former star. Her royalties from Blondie's catalog barely reached $40,000 a year, most of it eaten by legal fees. Then in 1995, something shifted. A wave of alternative bands, Garbage, No Doubt, Elastica, began citing Blondie as their biggest influence. Suddenly, the same critics who buried her were rewriting history. Debbie Harry was not a relic. She was the blueprint. But before the world would remember her name again, she had to face the mirror, the woman she had become after the empire crumbled. In her own words, "I lost everything. Fame, money, love, all gone. But the strange thing is, once you lose it all, you stop being afraid." That fearlessness would lead her back to the stage and back to redemption. By the mid-90s, Debbie Harry had become a ghost of her own legend until the world finally caught up to her. Grunge had burned out, pop had gone plastic, and suddenly the industry was starving for something real again. In 1997, after 15 years of silence, Blondie reunited. The same band that once sold 40 million records now stood on a small stage in London, playing for 2,000 people, but the magic was still there. 2 years later came No Exit 1999, their first studio album since 1982. It shocked everyone. The single Maria debuted at Hajone on the UK singles chart, making Debbie, at 53 years old, the oldest female artist ever to achieve that milestone at the time. The album went platinum in Europe, selling over 2 million copies, and Blondie embarked on a 170-date world tour that grossed more than $10 million. After years of ridicule, she was once again a headliner not for her body, but for her endurance. In the 2000s, the world began to rewrite her legacy. Younger stars like Gwen Stefani, Shirley Manson, and Lady Gaga cited Debbie as their blueprint for fearless femininity. In 2006, Blondie was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, a belated recognition of a band that had changed music by breaking every rule. On stage that night, Debbie didn't cry. She simply smiled and said, "We were never meant to fit in. That's why we lasted." Her influence stretched far beyond sound. She became a champion for LGBTQ+ rights, performed at Pride festivals, and supported AIDS awareness campaigns. Fashion houses from Marc Jacobs to Gucci resurrected her image in campaigns inspired by her late 70 Seconds rebellion. She continued to record Panic of Girls 2011, Pollinator 2017, each charting in the top 10 of the UK albums chart. Even in her 70s, she was touring to sold-out European crowds of 20,000 fans a night. In her memoir, Face It, 2019, Debbie wrote, "I learned that survival is the only real fame. You outlast the lies, the noise, and the beauty that fades. What's left is the truth." Today, Debbie Harry stands as one of the few who made it through the machine, the sex symbol who refused to be destroyed by it. Her story isn't just about music. It's about the cost of being seen and the strength it takes to stay visible when the lights go out. Because legends don't vanish. They wait in silence until the world remembers who they really were. Debbie Harry proof that even when the spotlight dies, the fire never does.